Hi there, my name is Juliana Hock, and I help people who may or may not have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I help you go from suffering to feeling in control and productive. Thank you. So I wanted to introduce our topic, and then I'll introduce our guest. So as we all know, ADHD exists, and I believe there needs to be more resources and information on the topic of inattentive ADHD. Currently in the DSM-5, there are 3 types of ADHD: inattentive, hyperactive, and combined type. Today, we are covering inattentive ADHD, and we're focusing on working memory, task initiation, and self-directed thoughts. And to have this conversation about inattentive ADHD, I have the one and only Barbara Luther. Barbara Luther is the director of ADHD coaching at the ADCA ADHD Academy, and she's also a master coach. And Barbara is also one of the pioneers in PAC ADHD credentials. So if you go to get your ADHD certification, you have to go through PAC as well as ICF and ADCA, but she's a pioneer in the ADHD coaching field. So thank you, Barbara. And I'm sorry for that handful. But Barbara, thank you. Do you mind starting us off with the textbook definition of inattentive ADHD?
Well, the textbook definition talks more about not paying attention to close detail, difficulty sustaining attention through tasks, not following through, not finishing chores or duties, difficulty listening to instructions. That's the kind of the inattentive description in the DSM. Losing things a lot, being easily distracted, forgetful. That's the DSM description. For me, what inattentive ADD is more that we live in our heads, that our heads are so busy. We have more executive function challenges. But what we're finding is this, for adults, this is the most common type of ADHD. And it's very stable over time. So it doesn't change a whole lot. It stays pretty much the same. So that's the hardest part about it, is that we live so much in our heads that we're distracted by that. So it's hard to pay attention to other things because we're so busy in our heads.
And thank you for that. And, you say we're so busy in our heads, for someone who is so busy in their head and their mind is very creative and luscious, so to speak, how can you, what's your best advice for someone to get out of their head and into present moment?
Isn't that the trick? It's helping them realize the importance of being in the now. So it's about mindfulness. It's about pausing and to be present. So trying to get us into our bodies as much as we can. So realizing that that the present moment is important. So learning to pause and realizing that the presence is important, caring about, and I always think who is with you. So caring about people, and we do care a lot about people. So realizing the present moment is important, and noticing the people around us and caring about them. We do care about other people. So being interested in people. So yeah, it's exciting our attention, because our thoughts are very interesting, but people are also very interesting. So it's really paying attention to people around us. That's what catches our attention. So that helps.
That being said, what if you don't have people around to get you in attention? So if you are by yourself in your thoughts, how do you get yourself to be productive if you don't have people around to help get your attention?
I think sometimes it's knowing a purpose. It's knowing that you have, I think of it as kind of a deadline or creating a game for yourself, knowing that you have something that you want to do. ADDers work so well to, I think of it as sprints or passion purposes. We've got to know what we want and really truly want it. So purpose is so important to us. Whatever that is for us, we've got to have a purpose. And when we really want something, we can be really focused on it. Whether that's doing dishes or creating something for other people. So feedback loops, knowing somebody's waiting on us, wanting something from us, that we really care about how we're how we're going to present to somebody else or whatever. It's having a purpose of some sort that we really care about. So it's got to be connected to something we really care about and value. When we can make that connection, we can get moving about anything. So it's really finding that purpose that I think is so very important. For me, it's always been about having somebody else that I care about, and being connected to a purpose related to that, having always a feedback loop. That's been the best thing. And also projects, building everything into projects. So short sprints is what I call them, having a short sprint so I can move toward that project and get it done and then feel good about that. That energizes me, and then I can move on to another one. I need that variety too. So sprints really work, if that helps.
Yeah, and I like also what you said about variety, because what else can get us interested, but other than variety of things that interest us. But so I wanted to ask you, touch on something you mentioned about purpose. And obviously, we can't define what purpose is for our other people's. For our listeners, know Barbara is a master coach, and I'm an ADHD coach and training to be a master coach. And we both see clients for ADHD coaching sessions. And what I wanted to mention about purpose is how often this comes up in a conversation where my clients, I'm compassionately saying this, is they know their passion, but they don't know it. And
Yes.
they're almost looking to me to help uncover the hidden buried treasure. So I
Right.
don't know how to really ask you this question, but if you were someone who is lost with knowing their passion, would you give any direct North Star to those people?
Um, it comes back to, I think, sometimes values. What do they value, and connect that to strengths as well. So we often find out what makes them tick, I guess, and what do they most value in their lives. So it comes back to, okay, what are the key things in their lives? I sometimes think about it as, what this is a silly, well, it's not a silly question, but it sometimes answers the question, because I have clients come to me who say, I worked really hard all day, but I didn't do anything. So I will ask them, well, what do you need to do in a day so that you feel like it was a well-lived day? Or another way is, what are the big rocks that you want to do in a day that will help you feel like it was fulfilling? And as we find those, they're usually connected to values. So and then we can kind of work back from there to what's important to them. And that will be connected to purpose.
I really like how you said big rocks, because I'm a rock climber, and boulders are something that you do have to climb over, and it is exceptionally hard depending on the level.
Yep.
So I really like that, because for me, I break my days into AM tasks, 3 hours in the morning, and then 3 hours focused
Yep.
on lunch. So
Nice.
me, it's pretty cool that if someone isn't time chunking, they can at least
Mhm.
identify what's that boulder for you, that rock for you.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Thank you for sharing what keeps you interested. I also wanted to ask you on the topic of task initiation, of getting things done in the day. a lot of us, you even said it yourself, executive function, it's a
Mhm.
deficit for us ADHDers. So when we're managing our home and our work life, and we have all these house duties, family duty, animal duty, wants, how do we remember what has to get done so we're productive, or does that
Yeah,
make sense?
I think we do need a lot of lists and reminders and prompts. And we need, I guess I would say, um, we need rewards for those. We need things that will pull us into them. And a lot of times that is a connection to others, like a body double or some literally reward that we really care about that will pull us into those things. And it can be simple things, but we've got to care about that um, yeah, that somebody's going to appreciate it for us, or there's going to be a connection to it. Again, that's where the feedback loop comes in for me. I'm doing it not just for me, but for someone else that I care about. That I'm doing it so that somebody else will benefit. It's not that they're going to it's not that they're going to pat me on the back so much as they're going to benefit in some way, and that really means something. At least for most people, it's doing for others. We seem to be, as human beings, we care about doing for others. That's a reward for most people, and when we can make those connections, that's very motivating.
I love that. Thank you. And when you mentioned, feedback loop and doing things for others, I wanted to touch on working memory. So, and we talked about lists, and I know for myself, I'm very visual. If I can see it, it's a very helpful
Mhm.
reminder. I wanted to ask you, so in a situation when I'm talking to someone and something is said and I don't remember. What's your best advice for remembering important details in the moment?
Uh, Sometimes it's repeating it back or repeating back a few words if you can think to do it. That's the trick for inattentives is we don't always know what's important to pay attention to, right, Juliana? That's the hard part is knowing what's important of all the things people are saying or doing. So if you have a sense that something's important, just I think of it as mirroring or parroting back so that it kind of sinks in. But it's also kind of, I think of it as putting my focus completely on it so that I'm locking it in. If that, yeah, it's almost like putting a spotlight on it so it really anchors it as a memory per se. If I think to do that, a lot of times I don't. So sometimes it's as simple as I may have to ask you about that again. Uh, it's even saying that to a person. Of course, it is having a little notebook and thinking to write it down. But it's sometimes just that fleeting thought of this might be important. Um, and it's also about giving yourself grace. I may not remember this thing, and it's okay to ask again. It's okay to say, "Gee, I don't remember that. Could you help me?" I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to remember things, and sometimes we're just not going to, or we didn't know to be attentive to things. And I think we do have to be a lot kinder to ourselves because we don't know what's important a lot of times. It's very hard for us to tell. And so I think giving ourselves grace takes the pressure off, and then we may remember more than we realize.
And I love your giggle, it's so sweet. Another thing for me is, I don't know why, I don't know if it's dyslexic piece, but processing for me, sometimes I might not remember in the moment, but I do remember either that night, weeks,
Yes.
I've even had memories years later. I don't know what it is, but I just want to say I acknowledge what you said of it's hard to tell what is important, but we do remember, and to
Mhm.
put a spotlight on what it is that was said, I do think that's helpful.
Yes.
Um,
Sometimes I will say to myself, I'll remember that later. It'll come to me later.
mhm,
And that's the taking the pressure off.
mm,
And I think sometimes that's what we do to ourselves is we pressure, and that shuts us down. It literally blocks our memory. So just say, oh, I'll find that later. I was doing a puzzle last night, and it was like, I can't find this piece. And then I just said, oh, it'll come to me later. I'll see it here later. And sure enough, a little bit later, that piece was so obvious. So it's taking that pressure off, and then it does pop in. So I think again, we just are so hard on ourselves and judging ourselves, and it's like, stop. Be kinder to yourself. It's amazing. We have a wonderful brain, but it processes a little slower or differently. That's okay. It's all right. Okay. So we got to remember that.
and I learned so much of how to treat myself this way just by learning from you, because you model it so well since I've met you, February 2022. So I appreciate you modeling that. Because by seeing you be patient and present, allowed, and you acknowledge that you're inattentive. And so when you said these things to me when I first met you, it gave me the opportunity of hope that this is I can be present, I can be this compassionate person, and I can get what I want in life. So
Mhm.
thank you for I never even shared that, so thank you. So, I wanted to mention, you said, giving ourselves grace, being compassionate with ourselves, that's another working memory piece. If we don't pause to pay attention, it doesn't go to our long-term memory. So
Mhm.
in moments, in the past, I've heard Kristen Neff says moments of self-harm, but
Yeah.
in moments when we don't feel confident about ourselves and our feeling whole and our capabilities, what's just your best advice for someone to feel whole in that moment?
Ah, um, I think it is about our self-talk so often. And there are times to just say, you know what, I'm not going to remember, or you know what, I'm going to be slow. I may actually forget this, or don't count on me here.
Mm,
Um, it's okay to say that. I think sometimes we're such people pleasers at times. We want to do so well. And sometimes it's like, you know what? I don't think that's for me. Or something like that. It's just it's being okay with that sometimes, or saying, I'll get to that, but probably not on your time frame. Uh, and and not accepting the judgment, not accepting it. That's their stuff, not ours. And being okay with that. I think you do have to push back some, and be okay with that, because you're going to get that judgment, but that's their story, not ours. Doesn't have to be ours.
it's so powerful, and thank you. I also am taking notes of your amazing words, so thank you. I like that is their story, not ours, and if we can remember that, it really can anchor us forward. So,
Yeah.
this wasn't in my outline, but what I wanted to bring up is, inattentive symptoms are very invisible. Like, the girl that's hidden in the back of the room who's shy in the classroom, the
Yes.
adult who might not remember something but is giving their all. So, this comes up a lot in my coaching practice where professionals are looking for accommodations for themselves. So, what I want to ask in a really refined question is, for the working professional who has the invisible symptoms of inattentive ADHD, who is present but might be afraid to ask for help on clarifying details. That's the biggest thing coming up for my practice is like So what is your advice for anyone who's an inattentive professional who is looking to be more paying close to detail in emails or with the communicating? Do you have any light to shine?
I often, it's advocating for ourselves. So my brain works a little differently. I process a little differently. So I need a little more time, and I need to write things down. So, and I need to come back and check with you. So is that okay if I come back and check with you? If I miss a detail or something, please let me know. So I do think it's about saying, my brain does this a little differently. I take a little longer, but you're going to get a great product. So it's confidence that, you know, we can be very thorough. We're rocket scientists in our brains. You know, we really are. We do have rocket science kind of thoughts, but they may be slower to come out. And we go really fast, that means we're going to miss some detail. So it's saying, that's how I work, so I'll need this help. And always knowing I'm going to have to write things down. Remind me if I'm not writing something down. So it's just speaking to that right up front, and telling people that's what I need. That's how I work. I think that's the thing, is being proactive. If you say it up front, and asking for some of that accommodation, then people really can't be upset about it, because you're saying, I know it, and I'm trying to take responsibility for it, right? And I think that's the thing. If we're saying, this is just what my brain needs so that I can do a great job, how can they complain about that?
I yeah. I carry this little thing when I'm in real time. For the
Mm-hmm.
audience, you can't see, it's about finger length notebook, and I do get comments of people saying I'm distracting them taking notes, and when that does happen, I do so you know how you mentioned spotlight on important details.
Mm-hmm.
So in that exact moment, I I put all my brain power to spotlight. It's like I highlighted the sentence in my head, like 6
Mm-hmm.
words. Try to keep it
Mm-hmm.
short, but
Good.
it is
Smart.
important to, in those
Mm-hmm.
situations, you can't write it down. How can I still succeed?
Yeah. The
And
other thing you might try is, for some people, it's using a recorder. You know, it's pulling out your phone and just hit record, and taking little phone notes that you can then have transcribed when you get back to the office. But it's saying up front, I'm going to need to have notes of some sort, and I'm going to need to come back and check. And somebody may need to check my work to see if I've missed a detail. It's being proactive again, instead of being broadsided later. But it's getting out in front of those things and saying, I know this about my brain,
Mhm.
and I'm just going to need a little bit of help here, but you're going to get this great thing because I'm very innovative, I'm creative, I have this divergent thinking. You know, you don't have to teach me how to be creative. That's what I bring to you. So that's the beautiful part of this brain.
And
So
yeah, I want to acknowledge that if it wasn't for your amazing language of inattentive, I would have maybe never known how creative I am with my thoughts. And I owe you my life for that, because if you don't see the good in your values and your performance, you're gonna think everything about you is chaos. So I thank you for giving me that opportunity.
oh, great.
I
Yeah.
can't thank you. And I'm not holding you too much longer, but there's something I know I get asked this, and I got to talk about this with you. And that is, people getting a diagnosis, they always ask me, like, what's the first step? So, in your experience with all of your years of coaching, I'm not going to tell everybody how long, because but if you were to get diagnosed in attentive ADHD today, what would you do for your first step of scaffolding of support?
Get a coach. Get a
Well,
coach so that you learn about it, because I think the doctors don't give you any education. They just say, here's your diagnosis, go. Or they might at least try to give you a medication. And a lot of times you need a little different medication or more or less than for the other subtypes. So the first thing is really go get some true education. And that's where coaching comes in, to really learn about your own brain. And you can't get that from a book, Juliana. You need somebody who will ask you questions and help you figure out how your brain works. And that's why I say go get a good, knowledgeable coach, because that's going to help you so much to help you learn about your brain and therefore then your strategies that work and figuring out how your exact brain works. That's the best thing you can do and learn to advocate for yourself.
That I can't hold this question back, but in your opinion, how effective do you see ADHD coaching?
Uh, I'll tell you a story that I just heard from one of our one of our graduates. Um, she had a parent call her the other day and say, my son has been to 7 different professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, neurofeedback, NLP person, all these different professionals, and the boy's just been a disaster. I want you to work with my son. He was about 12. And the coach said, well, what can I do if all these professionals haven't helped him? Please see my son. And so the son came in and talked to her for a couple hours. And one of the questions she simply asked him was, well, is there anything at school you like? And he brightened up and said, yeah, I love my science class. And she said, tell me about that. And they just talked for a couple hours. And then, he at the end of the session, he just stood up and he looked at her in just this long stare. And he didn't say anything and he just left. And then a couple days later, the mother called and said, what did you do? I have a totally different child.
Oh.
That's what coaching can do. That's what coaching can do. So, and this coach had said, I was thinking about not working with kids anymore. I guess I'm going to have to keep working with kids.
Oh, powerful.
So that's what we can do, because we look at the person and help them learn about themselves. She just asked them, really, she asked him about himself instead of trying to put things on them and apply generic tools to them. And that's what too often the professionals are doing. So there's a huge place and need for ADD coaching if they're good, if they know what they're doing. And that's what we try to do at the Academy, is teach you how to be great ADD coaches so we can change the world. I know, it kind of blew me away. It was just a gift that came just unexpectedly to tell me that story. Yeah.
And I have so much empathy and sympathy for both the client and the coach, because I was that client where I felt broken until I worked with a master coach, and I genuinely felt broken until I learned about myself. And that's why I say I'm a product of ADHD coaching, because before coaching I was self-aware, but by having such a keen, sharp sense of self-awareness, I've been able to basically catapult my ADHD and dyslexia, that it no longer defines me. I can actually define my life for me. And that's what I wish for everyone with their
Yeah.
coaching.
Yes.
That was a lot. And thank you for that deep breath there too. So, Barbara, we mentioned a lot of stuff. I mean, you gave us the best information on support and tools for someone with inattentive ADHD. I can't help but ask, am I missing anything?
Well, one thing I thought of that I don't think a lot of people know is there's a 50% overlap with something called cognitive disengagement syndrome. And we're learning more and more about that with inattentive ADHD and this cognitive disengagement syndrome, which used to be called sluggish cognitive tempo. And if you do see that overlap, it makes the ADHD more severe. There's even more more dramatic daydreaming. The person is much more confused, foggy. They're even slower processing. They have super low energy if they have this additional piece on top. So with that 50% overlap, we need to, if we see that extra piece is more than ADHD, we need to send them back to the doctor because we're seeing about a 50% overlap. That's what they're saying. And so we need to understand some people have that dual diagnosis, but they don't know it. So we just need to be aware of that. For some folks, they do need to kind of know that that may be impacting them. And I just think we need to watch out for that.
It's a lot to take in. To me, it sounds like, and I remember reading the sluggish cognitive tempo in the Dropbox, but to me, cognitive disengagement syndrome almost sounds like a double inattentive ADHD diagnosis. Is that really?
Yeah, it kind of feels like that to me. That's that, but they can distinguish it. It does come separately. But so they can say, yep, it can stand alone, but it does seem to overlap about 50%. And I just think the one thing that distinguishes it is there's much more social withdrawal with that syndrome that isn't necessarily true with inattentive, which I thought was very interesting. So if you see more social withdrawal, that could be a different syndrome than inattentive. So just be aware that you may be seeing some combinations of that.
I have so much is coming up for me on mood, but I don't think it's appropriate to fit in here for the conversation, but a lot because that ADHD is affected by self-regulation and emotional regulation, with executive functions, but it's just something for us to be mindful of, us and our listeners.
Yeah,
There's a lot more
it's
going
really
on.
new. They're still learning about it, but I just think we do need to have some awareness of it because, again, the more we learn, the more we can help people. So just thought I'd bring it up.
I guess this is a question for me. I guess I'm dying to ask, but if you're someone who's feeling this super sluggish, and you took your medication, but you still feeling sluggish, what would you do in that situation?
Definitely talk to the doctor and see if there's a different medication, but I would also check and see if there's check your vitamin levels, see that everything else is okay. Some ADDers are quite anemic, so I would definitely check that. Some ADDers can really benefit from B12. So they're learning more about some of the gut biome and some of the vitamin things. So there's more we're learning about that I don't think we know enough yet. I think there's a lot out there that we're still learning. So it doesn't hurt to have all of that checked. But I know that the anemia seems to come a lot with ADHD, and certainly some of the B12 seems to be something that a lot of us are missing and can benefit from. So it's not definitive, but those are just things that I've certainly heard about.
Some call me scattered brain. I try not to believe I am, but I should have asked you this sooner. Do you have a favorite high protein packed breakfast?
I don't have a favorite. I just, as long as it's a good quality one, you're good to go. But everybody's a little different, the flavors and whatever they want there. So I use different ones.
I know you know what's up, so I had to ask. But anyways, Barbara, I wanted to ask you, but thank you for everything you've shared. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Just go to the ADD Coach Academy. So Barbara@adca.com, Barbara@addca.com. That's the best way to reach me. So I'm there.
And for our listeners, you can get in touch with me at my email at easyadhd@gmail.com. and you can visit my website at easyadhdcoaching.com. And today was not magical, but today was a once in a lifetime opportunity to be here to speak with Barbara Luther about inattentive ADHD. And this is an episode that I encourage our listeners to come back to. And I hope in the future we'll have more, like pinpoint information on some other topics Barbara and I talked about, not in this, but of like feelings, future planning, how to see yourself in real time, food, and being intentional. So there's so much more to ADHD that we didn't talk about, and just for you guys to be mindful of, and to always take care of yourself, as Barbara has always taught me, is to always take care of ourselves. And I now say compassion before most of my words in a sentence, because it recenters me to be compassionate to myself. So thank you for that. And as you said, the wings beneath our wings.
Wind beneath your wings.
And so
Yeah.
thank you, Barbara. Thank you for the smile.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Juliana. Take care.